Yeah, so it's an honor to have Daizan over from London, from the UK. He's the head teacher with Zen Ways over there. We just got back from a breakthrough to Zen retreat out at Mackenzie Bridge. Had a really nice crew out there over the weekend. Yeah, just a real honor to have you out. Thanks for being here. Yeah.
So almost exactly 4 years ago, our Shinkai Roshi and my teacher in Japan, Zen Master Shinzan, died. We're very close to the 4th anniversary of his death. He was somebody who, in many respects, you could say had a very hard life. He was born in 1935, so pretty much by the time his memories were forming, Japan was at war. By the end of the war, I think he was 11 when the war ended. The schooling system had kind of broken down over there, and him and some of his classmates, a little group of 11-year-olds, were basically under the supervision of a 14-year-old. They all had, each one of them, a kind of a sharpened piece of bamboo, like a sort of an improvised spear, and they basically spent their days practicing hiding in the bushes and jumping out, killing an American. The idea was that probably the Japanese mainland would be invaded. It's 80% fairly densely forested mountain land, and there was going to be a sort of an ongoing guerrilla war. And that's basically what he was preparing for, and all of his contemporaries. And then suddenly, 80 years ago, almost exactly again, the war was over, finished very, very quickly. And suddenly, there was an American soldier in their village, and he was very kind, and he was teaching them how to play baseball and giving them cookies, and they'd never had anything like this. And I remember he said to me, I cried. And it seems that that soldier and his kindness was one of the key reasons why he was very open to foreigners, why Shinkai Roshi and myself had the opportunity to study with him. Not very many people in the Zen world in Japan are very open to foreigners, but he was. So he went to university, and like many of the young men of that age, the great project of the day for them was the reconstruction of this country, which was in ruins. So many of the cities had been firebombed and were basically built of wood and were just ash fields, just nothing. And so, like many of them, he went into construction. He worked for a while in big construction firms, but he always wanted to do something himself. He had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. And so once he got the chance, he set up a kind of a building materials delivery kind of company. One stormy night, they had an urgent delivery, and the driver felt it was too dangerous, didn't want to go. And so he took the wagon out on the road And it really was very rough. And I don't know the exact circumstances, but it seems that he ran somebody over and killed them. Yeah, there was an accident. And the company basically folded as a result of this and went bust. He started another company. Japan at the time had a shortage of cooking oil. There were many shortages immediately post-war. And so he came up with an idea to sort of purify used cooking oil so it could be reused. This was going to restore his fortunes, and he got his parents involved. He managed to lose all his money and his parents' money. The whole thing didn't work at all. In despair, he went down to the railway tracks and laid his head down on the rails. And he couldn't go through with that. He felt such a failure that he couldn't even do that. One day he was driving around a little bit aimlessly, went past a railway station. It was raining. There was a nun, a Zen nun, waiting for a taxi. Taxis were another thing in short supply in immediate post-war Japan. So he stopped. He asked this nun if she'd like a ride, and she jumped in, and he took her to her temple. And she was an extraordinarily bright spirit. He was very impressed by how kind, how present, and how incredibly joyful this nun was. So he dropped her off. They talked a little bit, but not in any great detail. Wasn't that far away from the station where he had to take her. And then he never quite found out how, but a few days later, she showed up at his front door. He'd not told her the address or anything. And so she knocked on the door, his apartment, and said, "I have a book for you." Gave him this book, and off she went. And he had absolutely no interest in religion. He thought religion was nonsense at the time. He wanted to make a fortune. He wanted to be a business mogul. He didn't want to be anything to do with religion. But anyway, so this book just went on the side for a little while, but then he eventually started to read it. And he couldn't believe what he was reading. This was like it was speaking to his heart. This was what he needed. And so he tracked down this nun. He found her again, went back to the temple, found her, and just bombarded her with questions. This led on to, not very long after this, she introduced her to the Zen Master that she studied with, a teacher called Mitsui Daishin, and not so long after this, he became a monk under the same teacher, and the nun and her fellow nuns made his robes for him. They kind of sponsored him, really. But that was really just the beginning, not an end. He was in his 30s by this point. He ended up in a world in which most of the young monks were 10 years younger than him. They sort of called him grandpa. and he was viewed with really quite some suspicion. Failed in business, failed in suicide, lost all this money. He didn't seem to be a very attractive proposition. He ended up in the temple of Mitsui Daishin's teacher, who was a very, very strict Zen master called Itsugai. Itsugai wouldn't even let the new monk come in for interviews because he thought he was just a waste of space. It was only after he'd spent a week meditating alone in a cave and was spotted going back to the temple that anybody began to take him seriously. And so eventually, slowly, he began to turn things around. He began the practice of facing himself, of facing the koan that we all face, of life, of death, of why we hurt, of why things don't make sense, of why it all seems so crazy, how it all fits together. What on earth is it all about? And over months and years of very tough training and many twists and turns, he ended up taking over the hermitage temple of a great Zen master called Bankei from a few hundred years ago. And he put a sign up at the gate when he took over this little temple. Satori place for old and young people. Satori is awakening or enlightenment. Enlightenment place for old and young people. And this is what he dedicated his life towards, helping people to wake up, helping people to find out who and what they really were and really are. In his teaching, he had this knack, without any kind of manipulation, of kind of creating a sort of chaos around him. You never knew what was coming next. I've been reflecting on the times that we're living in. It seems to me that as a world, we're in a situation right now where we just don't know what's coming next. And it's quite easy to worry. It's quite easy to fear the worst. It's quite easy to try to escape and live in some fairyland or avoid it all. None of that worked when you were around Zen Master Shinzan. The only way that you could basically stay there within this kind of force field of chaos was to deal with the actual moment. Nothing in the future, nothing in the past, the actual moment. I think that's what he would advise us to be doing right now. We have absolutely no clue what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month. But right now, here we are. Right now, we can do this. We can be together. We can practice together. We can be in a Satori place for old and young people together. We don't know tomorrow, next week. But if we look after this right now, moment by moment, chances are we're going to get through this. And if we don't, we're going to make the best go of it anyway. And something's going to get us in the end. So how would it be if right here, right now, we could ground in this? This moment where we're all right. Every single one of us is all right. I've had one or two people come to me the last little while in a little bit of a panic. And we've come up with a simple thing. If it all feels too dark, too difficult, just go and turn the tap on. Turn on the faucet. If water's coming out, we're good. Keep going. None of us really ever know what the future holds. But we can know for sure if we look after the moments. The future looks after itself. We have this environment, this place. We have this practice. And we have each other. We're doing pretty well. And anytime we want to, we can just go and turn on the tap, turn on the faucet. Just connect with that which flows. The Buddha teaches us that life is change, that we are change. There's nothing fixed, there's nothing solid anywhere. So when we turn on the tap, when we turn on the faucet, when we connect, remind ourselves of the flow of life. We can remind ourselves, like the old song has it, There may be troubles ahead, but let's face the music and dance. Thank you so much for your practice, and thank you so much for having me.